Welcome to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast, your place for tour-proven conversations, world-class instruction, and real results. I'm your host, Larry Rinker. My guest today was a two-time All-American at the University of Missouri, won the Chattanooga Classic on the PGA Tour in 1989, and has 3 wins on the Korn Ferry Tour. He is one of the top short game coaches in the country and has authored 4 books. Please welcome my good friend Stan Utley to the show. How you doing, Stan?
Hey Larry, I'm pretty good.
Well, I know you just got back from Colorado to, I guess this is your second season there in Fort Worth at Shady Oaks.
I got a new home in Fort Worth and I'm looking forward to getting back out there. I'm going to the course this afternoon.
Awesome. Well, someone named Ben Hogan used to hang out there, so I'm sure there's
It's
some
quite
memorabilia around.
pretty humbling and quite a privilege to go through the clubhouse and walk his grounds.
Well, there's a lot of talk these days about the low spinner, and it seems like a shot that we're hearing a lot about. And I'm going to show you me hitting this low spinner. So this is a lot of guys are doing with their lob wedges, ball back, a lot of forward shaft lean. You can see I can draw a line here. You can see 78, 12 degrees of forward shaft lean. And then basically, I call this a low release where we're pulling, turning, and the club's not really passing the lead arm much. But the low spinner has become very popular on tour today. So, what do you think about that shot?
The irony of that is I thought I was hitting a runner. Like
Right.
I didn't even know I was spinning it. Mr. Lanning, who taught me, he said, in order to master the short game, you must master the first bounce. And I was so fortunate as a kid, they turned my course from 9 to 18 as I was getting out of my freshman year of high school. So through high school and through college, when I was at home in my little town of West Plains, Missouri, I had a real green to hit my wedges to. And I took care of that green like it was my baby because I was the only one that really used it. But this shot you're talking about, where I hit a low shot, I thought I was hitting a low hook and run. And then through the years, people would play golf with me and they're like, how do you put so much bite on your ball? And how did your chip spin so much? And I was like, I thought I was running it. Technology comes along and they start measuring it. Well, I understand now. Primarily, Rob Akins showed me what made the ball spin. And he said the lower you hit on the ball, the farther under the equator you hit with solid, clean contact, the more it's going to spin. And he showed me the more down you can be at impact, you basically get to turn the equator up as much as you hit down. And that
Wow.
allows you to hit farther below the equator. So, like the shot that we spin the most is a downhill lie shot because the equator, if you're swinging down, you're ahead of it, and you got the downhill lie, you turn the equator up the most. So it's a cool shot. I tend to
Shot you
play
used, is it a
I
shot you used when you played, or did you feel like
all the time, but I didn't know that's what I was hitting.
but were you feeling like you hit it with hook spin, not cut spin?
I hook almost every chip. I hardly ever cut a chip.
And have you seen what that data is? That you
No,
really hit it with the club face close to the path, or you
I
don't?
can see what the ball does.
Right.
My ball spins and kicks left. It doesn't spin and kick right.
So you're probably putting a little hook spin on it.
But
I,
it's got
I
a
think
lot of
you
back it's got a lot of backspin on it if I need it. But I hit
right,
lots of shots that don't spin.
right.
So I hit the trajectory and the spin that I want for the situation.
Well, when you and I grew up, and I remember my college golf coach, Buster Bishop at University of Florida, taught me visualize a spot where you want the ball to land and then fly the ball there. And then that helps you visualize the trajectory you want to land it there. And I don't really think we ever thought spin as much as they talk about today. We thought more trajectory and where we wanted it to land to have the distance be correct.
I played so much basketball and ping pong. I feel like I really understood English. I would make the ball do what I wanted it to do with my hands and my wrist and my forearms. Uh, I practiced making them kick to the right, kick to the left when I was young. So I thought about spin as a young player. I didn't understand it really, other than I knew how to play ping pong and shoot hook shots. Like if I didn't shoot a hook shot, my shot got blocked. I could jump so high. Did I tell you about doing a vertical leap test?
No.
The guy said my vertical leap was 13 and a half inches.
Jeez.
And I said, so what you're telling me is I wear a 9.5 shoe, so I'm clearing the ground 4 inches. No wonder my shot got blocked. Thus my long drives.
Thus your long drives. Yeah. Well, I can remember you early on in the fitness trailer on tour working on those hands and wrists and forearms, getting them strong.
You never saw me work out once.
I did see, I caught you in the fitness trailer once. I remember it.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, I do. I remember it. But anyway, I will say this about the low spinner. Personally, it's not a shot I hit. It's not a shot that I played in the past. And I really think Lee Trevino explains what you want to do on that shot the most. You better make sure the handle rises and comes around your body so you don't stick that sharp leading edge in the ground. So there's a lot about the handle rising and coming around. Otherwise, if somebody kind of that trail hand hits there, it's real easy to chunk that shot. And I'm someone
And
that I've liked to use the bounce more on those shots. So I've always felt like when I hit that shot, I threw it more than I blocked it.
I will say I do all the above because Mr. Lanning and Mr. Parkins, the guys who taught me how to wedge it, had me play a square to close stance and the ball forward. And I hit a low hook spinner. So
Wow.
I like to say there's different ways, like fancy words that I learned from Jim Hardy, steeps and shallows.
Right.
I release the club down with what I call the vertical lever of my wrist. That is shallowing the club. I lag the side angles of my wrist. So that is lag and forward shaft lean. But I don't get forward shaft lean out of pulling the grip. I get forward shaft lean out of massively leaning my body ahead of the ball. I get the club out of the ground by raising up. And I have a ping wedge that's a replica of the old ping L wedge that Karsten originally made. So around the toe area, it's probably got 14 or 15 degrees of bounce.
Wow.
So see, I'm hitting down 12 degrees. I still have bounce. That's what I don't hear people talking about.
Right.
So I can hit a trap low spinner hitting down 10 or 12 degrees and possibly still use the back edge of the club. So I talk about shallowing the club with my wrist, not wristing forward, wristing down. My thumbs are
Right.
pointed down. I
Yep.
got my right wrist lagged. My head is way left of the ball, so I'm hitting down on the ball. I'm raising up out of my knee bend and my hip bend. That gets the club out of the ground quick. My forearms are twisting to the left like crazy. I'm mostly twisting the shaft, not so much the face. The face is twisting de-lofted. I may have the lead edge down and the bounce up a little bit, but it's not that great of a, it's not, the lead edge isn't as steep as you think it is if your club has width and bounce on it.
Right. Well, I learned this from James Siegman that he added neutrals to the steeps and shallows. And the neutral is basically the club on plane. And then the steep, the good steep is the weight flows to your front foot. So we see a lot of great short game players. Their head even is forward of where it was at address. That's our good steep. That makes the club come down at a steeper angle. And then the good shallow is what you and James and I teach for a lot of our pitching, especially, is the throwing motion of those wrists hitting down, as you say, but we're really throwing it just like throwing an underhanded toss if we were the shortstop, toss it to the second baseman. But you mentioned earlier about how your friends at TPI, basically technology is verifying what you learned from your mentors way before we had anything to measure this stuff with.
Yeah, I like to say you and I learn from such old guys because we're old now that what they knew was before the fad of teaching golf, and it was the right information. Uh, I love that the guys at TPI did a great video. They showed that, say, Luke Donald, when he turns back, his head works left of the ball in the backswing. And then as he comes down, his head works away from the ball. It rises and it goes back away from the ball, and it goes left even more. So he's getting these steeps out of his body. The club, I say my hands and my wrist are actually shallowing the club, but my body is steepening it so much that I'm low pointing the swing beyond the ball. I don't like to tell people to hit down on the ball. They're already dipping and shoving their hands down at the ball too much to tell them to hit down.
Right.
What I tell them is the swing goes up, down, and up, so there is a bottom. The bottom of the swing must be past the ball. I think sometimes we're past the ball 3 or 4 inches. In a bunker shot, the low point of my divot is 4 or 5 inches past the ball. So I don't like telling people to hit down on it. There is a descending blow, but it's just because the bottom's forward.
Right. Yeah, and it measures. I was surprised how far my flight scope measured. I was hitting down even with the ball forward. My angle of attack was still down 10 degrees when I was, using a lob wedge to hit a flop shot or hitting, not a super flop,
And
but just,
and we thought we were shallow.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think optimally, Stan, the reaction with the ground, I like to say that we hit the ground just a few milliseconds before we hit the ball. It's almost the same, but it's just slightly before, and that's butter. I mean, that's when you just
Some,
feel that bounce interacting with the turf, hits the ball, and it's like, wow, that just feels so
sometimes I
good.
hit way before the ball,
Yeah,
particularly in the rough.
particularly in the rough, particularly when you've got soft sand in a bunker.
I had the incredible fortune of playing in the 1990 PGA at Shoal Creek. And Payne Sturt asked me to go play a practice round with him, and Chuck Cook was there. And I hadn't really seen long Bermuda grass ever before, not the way that was set up. And they showed me how to land the club way early, let the left wrist cup. And what I call it is the back edge of your wedge is gliding and the lead edge is cutting the grass. So the lead edge never digs down, it slices the grass as the trail edge glides the grass. And uh, so many years later, I was at Wingfoot with Darren Clark, and I watched VJ show Darren exactly the same shot. And you hang around good players, you learn a lot.
Well, you do. And I think there's a lot to be said what you and I learned playing the PGA Tour and all the tournaments we played in. I personally believe out of the rough, you don't want to hit shots out of the rough with a lot of forward chaff lean. Because if you hit it with a lot of forward shaft lean, you can catch a flyer, you can chunk it, or it comes out about right. And Paul Azinger showed me, hey, get that ball forward, get the handle back, and throw it. And all of a sudden now I'm doing what you said. My, I've got the back tires of my airplane hitting first, not the front tires.
Yeah, do you think he showed that to Payne or Payne showed that to him or they learned from somebody else? I don't know, but it's interesting they were buddies and they both showed us that shot. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and then there was some guy named Sevi that was playing on our tour in the 80s that I don't know who you think the best ever was, but he's the top of my list.
And every time I give a bunker lesson in the clinic, I explain that Tom Pernice, who went to UCLA, came straight from being with Sevi and Mac O'Grady to the Missouri Open in 1983. And the first thing we did was drive to the course. He was staying in my apartment at college there in Columbia, Missouri. And he said, I got a lesson from Sevi this week. I got to show it to you. So I tell people, you are two people from Sevi getting a bunker lesson. The irony of that was in 2012, I turned 50 and I was watching Tom hit practice bunker shots. And every shot he hit out of the bunker, he had the ball teed up and he had his club buried in the sand right under the ball. And I said, why is your club in the sand before you take your practice swing? He said, Sevi did that every time. I'm like, you didn't say that in 83. So I learned something else
But why'd he do that?
because he wanted to hit so close to the ball. He made a mark. He put his club in the sand right where he wanted to land. Like he wasn't trying to play a fat shot. I asked people, why do you think a fat shot's better in the bunker? You don't hit a fat shot out of the fairway.
No. And we all know a fat shot out of the bunker rolls. And
Yeah, they want to know
you
why
hit.
my ball spins. I said, I don't drag up a bunch of sand between the club and the ball on purpose.
So Stan, you did an article quite a while ago now in Golf Digest, talked about flip the triangle in putting.
Oh, yeah, I think you and I all day, every day are meeting people who believe the idea that you should accelerate through the putt. And yet, when you look at the best putters in the world, it seems to me like their follow throughs are a little shorter than their backswings. And, I was very fortunate that Mr. Lanning had a saying. He said, putt with dead strength. I didn't really know what that meant, but my son Jake went to college and got an engineering degree, and I would hang out with a professor named Dr. Tom Mace, who was a really great player, had a lot of engineering degrees, and I asked him to explain a pendulum to me. And when he got through explaining a pendulum, I realized gravity follows a pendulum. But he used these words, they were very powerful. He said, a pendulum falls at declining acceleration. Golf has never heard those words.
Right.
And what he meant was a pendulum doesn't fall vertical. As it falls, it shallows. As it shallows, it continually accelerates, but the rate of acceleration is declining. And I really think this is the genius of my short game and your short game. We learn to accelerate the club early. In putting, I mostly let gravity accelerate it for me because I'm not really tugging hard on the grip. As the club head, if it goes back far enough that I can let a gravity fall it to the ball, the acceleration rate at the bottom of a pendulum is zero. Maximum speed, zero acceleration. And then the ball is what interrupts the club head swing. Most people call it pop putting. I'm like, I don't think I'm popping it. I used to say that all the time. And then now I realize the ball is interrupting an object that is flowing at zero acceleration. And it's amazing that when I get this across to my students and I help them learn to take it back big enough and fast enough that they can use gravity in the downstroke, they get way better at making solid contact and having the ball roll the distance they desire.
Well, so much in putting is tempo, and Blast Golf has a thing. Brad Faxon endorses it, and this is more technology telling us what we already knew instinctively but couldn't measure it. But it talked about how long the backstroke took compared to how long the forward stroke takes. Not length, but time. And they found the average tour player's backswing took 0.6 seconds and the forward stroke was half that time. So for your musician, it was one and. It's on a ka, not on a ka. And you and I see people with long backstrokes that are kind of quick and long, and now everything slows down too much coming into the ball because if they matched what they did in length and tempo on the backswing correctly, they'd knock it way past the hole.
I
So
feel like I see the opposite guy.
you
The
do.
guy I see takes it back slow and short. That's why he accelerates too much. I don't have many people that decelerate.
Well, I do.
The people that think they're decelerating, here's what I tell them. You're over accelerating. If you're accelerating at the ball, that means the club head is changing speeds at the ball. So that little zone of area that they're hitting the ball in, because they're changing club head speed so rapidly, if they hit the ball a quarter of an inch early, it comes up short. I don't think they're always decelerating. I think they're over accelerating the grip and they're getting to the ball too soon. That's why it's going too slow.
Right. Well, I've shortened a lot more putting strokes than I've lengthened. You've done the opposite. So, but it's really, you say the pop stroke.
The
To
the
me, one of
time
the
I
best.
totally agree with though,
Yeah,
because uh, I've been measuring how long it takes me to hit a putt from start of stroke to impact for 23 years since I got Sam Putt Lab, and my time is 890 milliseconds, and that should be every putt. I'm actually have a tempo of 1.8. My downswing is greater than half of my backswing time a little bit.
right. Yeah, and I think that's something that where we get skewed in golf instruction is if the average is 2.0 and somebody's 1.8, they go, oh no, you need to be 2.0. No, that's an average of the tour players. And I'd love to ask, what was that variance of the tour players? Was it 1.6 to 2.4? I mean, you know, let me be somewhere in that variance. But, it's interesting. So many people, to me, the biggest myth in golf, Stan, is people trying to putt with their shoulders and not use their hands and wrists when they putt. And that's why I see a lot of times I'll film three angles in a putting lesson, face on, down the line, and then from the other side of the hole. And I see people with a 6 or 8 foot putt leave it short because they're putting with their shoulders and then it just slows down so much coming through, they don't even reach the hole.
It's interesting that Brandel called me a few years ago and he was working on looking up research about short game and putting. And he kind of named off the people that he'd found that had passed down great putting. And he named Horton Smith. And Horton Smith's from Missouri and he won the first Masters. And I happened to have his book because my wife Elena had bought me it as a collector's item. And I found a quote in his book from The Art of Golf, written by Sir W.G. Simpson in 1887. And the quote said, a good putting stroke could be made by a combined use of all arm joints. And I said, right there it is, 1887, everything it is I teach and everything Mr. Lanning showed me. It doesn't say restriction of arm joints, it said use of. That doesn't mean you use them a lot. That doesn't mean they're floppy or wristy, but they need to have the capacity to absorb the swing of the head, not be rigid.
And Horton Smith taught Ben Hogan. So there you go. So it's amazing though, these old golf books. I've collected a few of the old ones that I've paid several $100s for. And there's so much good wisdom in there of different players. Sometimes they tell us what they feel, and maybe what they feel isn't real, but there's a lot of good stuff in there. I think we've learned a lot from the players, Stan, the people that you and I got to play with. Like, here's Tom Pernice coming to visit you. Hey, let me show you what Sevy showed me. Payne Stewart, Paul Azinger showed me. I remember the first time I saw it was okay to use the bounce and hit behind the ball. Raymond Floyd at the Honda Classic second hole. He said, "Hey, Larry, watch this." He hits it. He hits about 2 or 3 inches behind the ball and hits kind of this high trajectory flop shot up on the green. I said, "Okay, Raymond, do it again. I want to get
Show,
closer.
show me how to
I,
do that.
I want to see this again." But see, you and I believe that people that use the bounce, when they use it correctly, they have that 2 or 3 inch window behind the ball that they'll still hit a good shot.
It provides a lot of grace as long as your head stays left of the ball. Using the
It's
bounce
a
and diving backwards doesn't work any good as any much better than having the shaft forward and diving backward. But if you have your head forward and tall, you can do lots of things with your hands in the club.
Yes, and you stay tall. And I had a student a few years ago that came to see you, and you said, "Stand up and turn through." And he said that certainly helped his short game. And I really believe, Stan, the reason we got to stand up is our trail arm is straightening more as we're releasing it. And so if we don't stand up with that trail arm straightening, we're going to stick it in the ground.
Well, it's interesting. I say that if you've ever pulled anybody out of the ditch with a chain, the worst thing that can happen is getting slack in the chain. And I actually think the dip comes from the people who drive their elbow too hard at the ball. So, like, I think the elbow lengthens because I raise up, not because I straighten my arm. The left arm is
Right, I
straight.
agree. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
And I think one of the things my buddy Rob Aiken shared with me one time was he said there's two kinds of throwing activities. We throw objects out of our hand and we throw objects that are not in our hand. So if you have a rock or a ball in your hand and you throw, your elbow lengthens before your wrist snaps. But if you're driving a nail in the side in a wall, your wrist goes before your elbow straightens. And all golfers that struggle with short game are throwing their hand at the ball or the target by lengthening their elbow before they throw the head with their wrist. And you and I both, we let the wrist unlever the head really early in the downswing. Everybody struggling is throwing their head, the grip down. And Michael Jacobs really helped me understand that a club has a balance point. Objects with balance points teeter-totter. If you influence one end, it has an equal and opposite influence on the other end. So the guy that shoves the grip down to start the downswing is actually shoving the club head up. And you and I start the club head down and the grip up early in a chip shot, and that makes all the difference in the world.
No, it does. I think there's a real art, Stan, to being able to just clip the grass. Like where, you've said the bottom is in front of the ball, but a real art to being able to just pick it off the grass. In the old days, we would pick it out of a lie in the rough so it wouldn't fly. So now that skill of just picking a ball off the ground without sticking it in the ground is a high skill in short game.
And another big piece of that equation that complements what you said is I don't think a person should ever look at the ball when they chip because we land our club on the bottom hemisphere. You can't see the bottom hemisphere. If you look at the ball, you're looking at the wrong part of the ball to ever hit, and your depth perception is in the wrong spot. So I try to be very insistent that my students look at the ground. The ground is where my depth perception must be. If my depth perception is the top of the ball, it's totally in the wrong spot.
Are you looking in
And
front of the ball in the ground?
I have no
Behind?
idea. I have no idea where I look. But I'm not looking at the golf ball. And when we get that beginner that top seven in a row, I explain to them how incredible talented they are. Because they're catching a quarter of an inch of the ball every time with the bottom of the club, and they are almost rarely ever whiff. That's difficult. So they're being incredible athletes, but their depth perception is in the totally wrong spot because somebody told them to keep their eye on the ball.
Stan, talk about some of your students. You worked with a lot of tour players early on. Jay Haas, Sergio Garcia. You were a big part of Jay's success on the Champions Tour. He was winning a lot of tournaments out there. He's had an incredible career, both on the PGA Tour and the Champions Tour. What are some things you've worked with your tour players that would help your higher handicap players that you work with?
Well, Jay's issue was something I see a lot of people struggle with because on his say 6 foot in the in putts when I first watched him, he was dragging the handle back. And his golf swing kind of starts with a lag of the arms and the club to take it away. But in a putting stroke, you don't really have time to lag the grip back and then get the head going. So basically, when he moved the handle, he was traveling his club head, but he wasn't swinging his club head. So he had no benefit of gravity on the downswing. So he'd either drag the grip back or flip the wrist. And I joke, my whole teaching career spun around the fact that I put my finger on the back edge of his putting grip and he swung the club head back without moving the top. And he got really good quick. And I see lots of my students when they think they're not supposed to use their wrist in the backswing and they actually wrist backward. If you drag the handle and keep the head low in the takeaway, you're cheating yourself of a pendulum swing because the pendulum swing to the top stays still and the bottom swings up higher. I see that a lot in putting.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned Sergio. Sergio's like there's not a lot of tour players that backload the shaft on the downswing. There's a few, but a lot of them, people don't realize the guys are unloading that head on the downswing earlier than they think. But because Sergio actually does backload it at transition, when he did that chipping, his club head was always late back to the ball on his little simple chips. And so basically what we've already talked about, I got him to release the head early on the downswing. And I see almost everybody struggling in chipping. Their grip end is accelerating too much in the downswing. So you don't need a lot of handle acceleration, particularly you don't need any with the arms. I may stand up and turn to get the grip to move, but I don't want to shove the grip forward with my arms in the downswing of a chip. Uh, that's just a couple examples that is widespread in the people that I teach day to day.
Yeah, I had a gentleman last week who he was left-handed playing golf right-handed like I am. And his hands were so far forward at impact with all the short game stuff.
And
And
he
I
has to
put a
dip.
club,
He has to
yeah,
dip.
and I put my club in front of his hands and I wanted his arms to stop and the club head to keep going because, he just really struggled. And what I see when guys hold angles is not only do they dip, but they go backwards with their body,
Yeah, is
which I
this a is
call,
this a P is this a PG show?
yes, it is.
Yeah, I call it my ass drill. I stand right in front of their left hip with my left hip, and I don't let them run the grip into my body. So I shut the handle down on their through swing so much earlier than they're used to. The club head releases, and then they hit it solid.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, we've talked a lot technically about things, but at the end of the day, some things are like, hey, you got to just stand up and feel you're releasing it earlier from the top, get the club head moving. And
And
it's
people are
not
scared. People are scared of their hands, and I like to say, hands grip. Hands do not release. Hands tell your wrist what to do, but the hands don't do it. Your wrist do it. Your forearms work. They have to rotate. Like Lee Trevino said, I don't care what you do to make the face be where you want it to be on the downswing, but on the through swing, your forearms better twist to the left if you're a right-handed golfer. I said,
and
he
he
looked through my soul and he said, do not let your forearms twist to the right when you're swinging to the left ever.
yeah, well, and there was someone with a really strong grip saying that too.
That's right.
Kind of
But
interesting. I remember videoing Paul Azinger. He was a low core player like Trevino, strong grip, really rotated hips at impact, but his arms and hands rotated beautifully past
to the
impact.
left.
Well,
They
he
didn't,
swung in to out to his body just like Trevino. They
right.
both aimed, I don't know, I'm going to guess 20 degrees left of where they swung. And if you put the camera right in line uh, behind Paul's hands where he was going to swing the club through. It was beautiful. The club was perfectly on plane that whole time, but his body is left of that.
It's
But
cleared.
that's it cleared, and he aimed left. And so, I used to play a lot of golf with him, and I worked some with John Redmond, his coach, and I could just tell him, okay, this is kind of where you need to aim, and that's where you should start the ball for the way you play.
It
The only
matched.
negative with those guys is they struggled hitting the ball high. That was the only thing. I think that's the reason why Lee Trevino didn't win the Masters. The only major he didn't win. A high ball
Yeah.
hitter is very, it's a great skill for.
They struggled into the Hall of Fame.
They struggled into the Hall of Fame. Do you bend your wedges a little flatter than your pitching wedge?
I've been all my wedges through my 9 iron flatter. My lie angles are 62 degrees or maybe just barely flatter than that. And it's interesting when I went back to it's the ping wedge that's a copy of the I2 L wedge. Uh, I always played that club at 58 degrees. And I think the original was 61. So I was taking loft off. So it had a lot of bounce on it, and I took a little bounce off of it. And, I'm looking for that same feel I had as a kid. And I ended up taking a 60-degree club and bending it to 58 versus playing a straight up 58 because the 58 wasn't how it was originally built, but it had a similar sole on it. And so, I tell people I don't know that there's a right and a wrong sole for you, but for a great player, he probably needs something similar to what he grew up with because our
Yeah.
hands know how that interacts with the turf.
Well, I remember one time you were testing out a wedge with only 4 degrees of bounce on it. It might have been a really high lofted wedge. And I remember your comment to me was, I think getting the bounce right might be more important than getting the loft right for you.
And it's interesting that when the consumer goes in the store and buys a club that says 4 degrees of bounce, it's usually a thin sole. So the bottom of the club is not very wide. And the angle of the bounce is usually about 20 degrees. So it frustrates me that they say effective bounce on it. They never measure the angle on the bottom. So like the one that says 4 should say 20 and narrow, right? It shouldn't say 4.
Right.
But I get their point, but it's hard to distinguish, but it definitely your hands and your swing interact with the bottom of the club on the ground in a certain way, and you need to find one that works for you.
Yeah, and that's why the steeper you are, the more bounce you want, and the shallower you are, the less bounce. But that old I2, I used to play with one back in the late 80s that had a wide sole on it.
It actually was wide at the toe and tapered to skinny in the heel. So if I got on hard pan, I could move my hands low and open the face and click it out of the heel, and I had very little bounce. And I had a narrow bounce, so it would do whatever I wanted it to do.
Yeah, you don't hear people talking too much about standing a club up and playing off the toe or getting your hands low and playing it more toward the heel and using the bounce that
Yeah.
way.
I
But
do all the above.
great wedge players do that. And that's when it's fun for you and I when we get students, we can show them everything we know. Whereas we get a lot of our amateur players that, boy, if we can just come up with one shot for them that they can count on, we've done a good job.
And I like to tell people, I said, you have good touch, but your skill will not allow you to use your touch. If I can improve your skill so that you can make solid contact, you already possess touch. But you don't get to use your touch if you never hit it solid because you don't know what gear to put your swing in.
Yeah, they can't develop that touch and feel because the consistency of the contact is, just so poor. It's a joke. So in 2002, you set the record for fewest putts in 9 holes with 6.
I set
What
two
did
records that
you shoot?
day.
What did you shoot, and what do you remember about that day?
So I like to say I set one record that'll never, I don't think I'll ever lose. I think my putts record has gotten tied. I can't even believe that.
It did?
I think it did. It's hard to believe somebody else had 6 putts in 9 holes, but here's a record I don't think they beat. I hit it 29 times from off the green and shot under par. So I think that's the record that will stand. It's hard to hit 29 shots from off the green and break par.
Yeah, yeah. Nobody's ever hit that many shots from off the green and broken par. Yeah, that
But
that
the
is
thing I remember most about that round was I made a very difficult bunker shot on like I think the third hole. And then I made another very difficult bunker shot on the seventh hole. And walking off the seventh hole, I realized I'd only had 4 putts. And so I'm like, this is pretty special. And then the eighth hole, I had to chip out of the rough before I hit it over a pond. And I missed the green on my third shot, duffed my next chip, left it on the fringe, and got up and down for double. So now I've just got 5 putts, but I made a double. And I made a birdie on a long par three on 9 to get to 1 under and 6 putts for 9 holes. I remember most of those shots.
that's pretty incredible. What a streak.
And what a God story, right? The irony of me ended up being a short game coach and being able to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, but that's why you are a short game coach. That's why when I first started teaching, I was teaching short game. We were good at it. We had a lot of success. We had a lot of personal experience with getting a ball up and down under pressure. So, and we're
And
continuing to learn because now there's technology out there that's kind of telling us what we do. And we didn't really have that when you and I played, but now we have things saying what we teach and what we do are really good. So here we are. It's end of September. We're basically going into what I call the golf season in the South, October through May.
that's right. They're turning up the volume here in Texas. Weather's
Yep.
getting good.
So what are you looking forward to this coming season?
I just can't wait to get back out to Shady Oaks and be with the members here and get to meet some new members, get to work with the guys that I saw the last year or so, and just be amongst the pros. It's an incredible culture here at Shady Oaks. They are letting me have non-member lessons occasionally. So if somebody wants to find me in Texas, they can go on my website and get a lesson here occasionally. So I still take non-members on some days, but I can't wait to get back out there and be amongst the members and get back after it.
One thing I found interesting going from Colorado to Florida, 4 months Colorado, 8 months in Florida. I'm now year round in Florida. Is you would see that student, and it was always funny that first lesson to me. Most of the time, I gave them the same first lesson I gave them the last year. I just
Exactly.
wonder if that happens with you.
Yeah, all the time. And we all have what my friend Shane calls a default. We all have kind of a similar mess up.
Yeah.
And I tell my students all the time, do you see how goofy a practice swing some of those tour players make? It's goofy because they're swinging on the other side of their default. They're not swinging normal. They're not making the swing in practice that they want to hit off the shot with. They're on the other side of that trying to get rid of the default. I got a question for you.
Okay.
So you're known as a short game coach, but that's not even fair anymore because you've been teaching long enough that I know you're teaching golf swing and how to play golf incredibly well. And how much of the time are you spending teaching golf swing and are you having fun helping people get better at their whole game?
I probably spend more time on full swing than I do short game and putting and distance wedges.
Same for me.
But if some, but I am doing a lot of full day schools where we do instruction 9 to 12, break for lunch, and do an 18-hole playing lesson in the afternoon. And so if they do a 2 day, one day is focused on short game and putting, and then the other day is full swing. I love being able to say I'm a total game coach and I also have worked with some of the best mental coaches in the game with Bob Rotella, Dick Coop, Fred Shoemaker. I mean, we were the lab rats back in the 80s and 90s for these guys. And so I just feel like there's a lot there. And, and then, hey, we're all having issues in life. And sometimes, you get to be personal with your students and you talk about things that aren't even related to golf. And to me, I just think that's really great that we can really share that with our students too. But I love teaching it all. I'm so fortunate. I met David Wright 10 years ago. I've been teaching right balance where there isn't one way to swing a golf club. I'm not going to put your average tour player up and say you got to swing like them. I love that God just made it where I met David Wright and there's an upper and a mid and low course swing. And when I found out my swing was upper, I quit chasing this tour model swing. And in the beginning, I thought I was in this small minority of people that's how we swing. And then to come to find out we're the majority. And especially as we get older, we're not going to be able to move and turn. Lee Trevino is in his mid 80s now. He's upper core, whereas in his prime, he was low core. So, a lot of people are retiring and have more time to play golf, but they're not 28 anymore. And so many of those people are going to be on the upper core spectrum. And it's a pretty simple swing. And it really involves learning how to use your arms, hands, and wrist when you swing a golf club. Just like we talk about when you putt and you chip and pitch and hit all these shots in golf. So I've really enjoyed teaching the whole game and it's been fun. I think a lot of people think that a golf lesson is 1 hour. I know you do, 3 hour blocks. I do a lot of 3 hour blocks, and you can really get a lot done when you have that. But, thanks for asking that question. I just love it. Hey, I'm 68 now, and it's just fun to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go out and meet somebody new and work with them on their golf game. So I feel very blessed.
It's incredible to help people with their addiction. And golf is a beautiful addiction because
Well, it's
it's
a good
endless
addiction.
it's endless problem solving.
It's
And
a
I think
good
that's
addiction.
healthy for the brain.
Yeah, and a lot of us go from one addiction, we give one up, but we need another one. So Alice Cooper said, "Hey, I was on drugs, but I started playing golf and I quit drugs." So if that happens, that's pretty cool that we can do that too. So Stan, it's been great having you on the show. Have a great season at Shady Oaks, my friend.
All right, let's be together soon. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Larry Rinker Golf Podcast. Till next time, keep swinging.